In the C-sharp major prelude, we have a little bit of that same kind of obsessive figuration, but again, I think there are a limited number or limitless, depending on your point of view, a number of parameters that can be utilized to traverse from the inception of the phrase to the end, or the end of each phrase. The first and easiest one is deciding whether we want the bass note, the bass voice. I tend to mark it somewhat overheld. In other words, past the point of the third eighth note. I think there's still a little bit of space before the downbeat, but I'm definitely overholding it here. The eighth note I've decided, and you'll hear in my performance, I've decided to make this another currency long term. So if we decide this is going to be the emergent voice, so this one has to be long. So we can go from short to long. So that's a plan, and that's a shape, and it doesn't even involve getting any louder. It's just a matter of utilizing those parameters in making a shape all their own. Sort of assuaging our ADD sense of looking at the same figuration and seeing, well, there has to be a different way to do this. Likewise, it's a calculation. Whether we want to overhold all of them, or whether I tend to overhold a little bit, but I tend to want to have a little bit of resonance here too, and I'll tell you why. It mostly became obvious that it's the left hand that wanted it. And if I just wanted to keep with the upper voice, it really would sound so thin. So in this case, it's a good thing that the left hand sort of tells the right hand what to do. So not necessarily louder, but longer. These moments of juncture, again, I think it's good to have the command and the practicing slowly, so that the last point of contact is the point at which we are playing slowest and making the most discoveries, that we might make an asserted diminuendo in the right hand and a crescendo, an emergent crescendo in the left hand. And also, so that we don't have to overdo, big dynamic shifts, tectonic shifts, we can also, decide. I've decided, you can make your own decision, that these notes are rather feathered, if not super staccato, and the left hand is contrastingly singing and legato. Again, here's the plan that I've come up with, so that this longest eighth note is the one that goes to the next theme, and again, crescendoing into the right hand iteration of the theme, diminuendoing into the left hand. This is not always the case. Here's a beautiful passage of trading back and forth between the left hand and the right hand. It again tends to compartmentalize bar by bar, measure by measure. I try to look for the potential, so that it's not one thing or another. Should that be a connection? Should it? I don't know. Maybe this one should be the real connection. Maybe they should be separate. Maybe it's just this one. So in other words, what we did this year. Sorry. So for instance, maybe these are more compartmentalized. I don't know, I like this one being connected to, but this one definitely, I think a little more most is probably a good plan, and something that that communicates to an audience very easily and surreptitiously, insidiously. And the more we can entrust our listeners' ears with taste and discernment and not beat them over the head, the better. Again, I think this is a good plan for plotting. I decide this time with the right-hand iteration, I've actually made an entrance diminuendo to the right-hand entrance and a crescendo in the left hand, because we're going to be going this time not into a legato or singing texture, but into specifically very staccato territory. And again, I ask you not to react visually as you would, let's say, if you were playing the trumpet. I really think if we had a violinist playing this passage, the offbeats would be a section all of their own. Let's imagine that they started somewhere back here. So in other words, what I'm making the melody note out of the top of the right hand is pretty prominent, but I've already, I think my notation, in my notation, parentheses will be, really the most important marking. I just love the idea of parentheses around notes to make sure that they are present and accounted for, but in a very decidedly subsidiary manner. Not start from nothing. And again, all of this can be a matter of I've marked them as such, so that the left hand starts rather short. The bass notes start rather short and get longer and longer as we gather into this very sort of tumultuous, falling and keening. And I think this is important to note. Sorry. We know how to play left hand, right hand, right hand, left hand. But imagine if we were an orchestra being put through our paces. Maybe if we were the violin section, we would actually be trying to create, or at least play in a synchronous sort of way, but inherently acknowledging the fact that we were playing offbeats. And I think as pianists, I think we have to enlist and elicit a little bit of that behavior, conjure it a little bit, so that our left hand and right hand are not necessarily run by the same brains, but are different brains, so that we actually feel a little bit of the viscera, a little bit of the kineticism between the fight of the left hand and the right hand. When it starts to follow into a more comfortable sort of vein, so be it. But basically, there should be a sense, and it can be something that we can actually make put more wide spaces between the left and the right hand, infinitesimally, incrementally, if we want to, just to convey that sense of tension as we play separately and apart from each other, and then we sort of coalesce into this beautiful sort of swooping passage. Here again, I've decided the left hand is taking over here. As I like to, I'm a left-handed guy. I tend to really make the left hand a little bit more prominent here. But again, not, but as a violinist would. A violinist would bring out the upper, in the cello would bring out the upper left hand, upper part, and these would be repeated notes at a very parenthetical sort of level. Thanks. Enjoy the performance, and I hope this was helpful.